Okay, so our next speaker, I have the pleasure of introducing Sangeeta Lalli from Telus Agriculture. And so Telus Agriculture Decisive Farming specifically is sponsoring this session, so we really appreciate their support for the conference. And so Sangeeta is going to talk about embracing connectivity and digital policy. A little bit more about Sangeeta. She has extensive policy, government, and communications experience in the ag and agri-food industries across, oh, hi, there you are. I will. And the public and private sectors. From advising the Prime Minister of Canada and cabinet ministers to shaping a $3 billion, that's billion with a B, partnership supporting Canada's agriculture and agri-food sector, Sangeeta brings unique experiences to policy development. Much needed, much appreciated. Sangeeta is currently a public policy director at Telus Agriculture and Consumer Goods, where she works with industry, government, and academia to accelerate agriculture technology adoption, supporting sustainability, food safety, and supply chain outcomes for Canada. This session will unravel the transformative potential that a technologically connected agricultural landscape holds and explore the pivotal role that digitization plays in advancing climate goals within the agricultural sector. So please join me in welcoming Sangeeta to the stage.
Well, thank you very much, Heather, for that wonderful introduction, and good morning, everyone. It does seem like everybody enjoyed a fun party last night. Well done. As you can tell from my title and where I work, I will be talking about digital policies today. I'll also be talking quite a bit about the internet, but I'm also going to add sustainability to the discussion this morning. You know, there are a lot of pressures that farmers are facing when it comes to sustainability and climate change. Over the last year, we've had to deal with droughts, floods, fires, and not just in Western Canada this year, Ontario, Quebec, I believe Nova Scotia also got it pretty badly this year. Also hurricanes. Farmers are facing lots of pressure when it comes to climate change. And on the sustainability front, we all know about the 30% reduction in fertilizer emission target that was set. And there's no way that farmers are going to reduce the emissions by reducing their fertilizer use by 30%. It's just not going to happen. But could technology potentially play a role in helping to reduce those emissions? I think so, but I'm not convinced that the digital infrastructure is where it needs to be to allow that to actually happen. Now, digital policies drive infrastructure farmers need to use ag technologies and for productivity, but also for sustainability. But did you know that 40% of rural Canadian households do not have access to high-speed internet today? This is very clearly a problem. A few of you spoke to me about this over the last few days, and this is an issue that needs to be solved. Digital policies can also be climate policies. Embracing technology can reduce emissions, but farmers need policies that support a strong digital infrastructure in rural communities to go beyond what we're able to do today. By the end of today's discussion, there are three things that I hope I can impart on all of you, or three things that you can all take away from today's discussion. The first one are policies that can support a digital environment and digitizing in the agriculture sector. Some facts and figures that can be leveraged that highlight the economic and sustainability benefits of technology in ag, and what the telco industry, governments, and farmers can be doing to help accelerate the adoption of technology. So at this point, many of you are probably wondering, what is somebody from Telus, that internet and cell phone company, doing on the stage, and why is she talking about agriculture? I also got that question multiple times yesterday. Telus Agriculture is one of the newest business units of Telus. Our mission is to create the best producer-to-consumer outcomes using technology. We provide software solutions and data insights that connect the global supply chain, help address inefficiencies by leveraging data, and improve the safety, quality, and sustainability of food. All of you will know this, but the agriculture industry is facing some pretty significant pressures right now. The industry is in a highly regulated space. There are many consumer demands, and there is a growing population to feed. The fact that we have ag technologies, or the fact that we have a fragmented ag tech space also doesn't help. There are thousands of ag technologies out there. They're all doing great work. Lots of them are collecting very important and valuable data and information, but that data typically isn't interacting with each other amongst all of these thousands of technologies. And that is one of the problems that we're looking to solve, is that, that lack of integration amongst data across these technologies. What we're doing is we're breaking down data silos and connecting data, providing our customers with both the bigger picture of what is happening on their farms and using data to help them make more informed decisions. But what's making it possible to leverage large amounts of data is connectivity. Our lives have changed significantly even over the last 5 years, but our lives have just changed significantly because of connectivity. With this thing here in my hand, I can right now FaceTime my uncle in India. Actually, it would be a little fun if I just did a demonstration of that right now, but I'm not going to do that. I didn't warn him that I would. I can buy a plane ticket. I could use ChatGPT to write my speech that I am using right now, but I did not do that, just for the record, but I could if I wanted to, and it would spit it out in a second. I can use my phone to feed chickens in a barn. I could also use my phone to determine how much fertilizer I should be applying on crops and where I should be applying it. Internet and technology enables a lot, but it only enables a lot if you can actually access it. And poor connectivity is currently holding farmers back. So I'm going to share this fact quite a bit. I don't know if I already shared this yet, but I'm going to share this constantly throughout this presentation. By the end of it, all of you are going to know that 40% of rural Canadians do not have access to high-speed internet service today. And by high-speed internet service, I mean 50-10 speed, so 50 megabits upload and 10 download. There are various things that people can do with high-speed internet, particularly on farm. We can transfer data faster. We can get access to real-time data from sensors and devices to make more immediate decisions. We can remotely monitor and control for the health of livestock. Can also take on new adventures and new sales, selling directly to consumers, improving our education outcomes by leveraging online education tools. And we can also improve worker safety. 72% of farmers reported having an incident on farm. What if there was something that we could just put in our pocket that could be connected, even in a dead zone? It's connected to, say, satellite. You know, Telus has been working on a tool called the Connected Worker Program, and it does just that. It connects to satellite, can also connect to Wi-Fi services where Wi-Fi services are available, and if one of your workers is in the field all alone, and if they fall or if something should happen to them, that little tool sends a signal to somebody else who can help send support. So there's a lot that can be achieved with connectivity, but again, that's if it's accessible. Agriculture has seen its fair share of changes over the generations and over the thousands of years that agriculture has been around. My grandfather, for example, I remember him tilling with animals, which nobody really does today, but I remember seeing that. And you're probably looking at me and thinking, so when the hell did he get a tractor? That happened when my uncle took over the farm. So my uncle started tilling with a tractor, and now there's no tilling at all. Agriculture is well into its fourth revolution, and this fourth revolution is being driven by digital technologies and by a good extent by the power of internet. Next up on top of what we have right now is 5G connectivity and the future of 5G and what that holds for the agriculture sector. 5G is the fifth generation of internet connectivity. Currently, many of us are in the fourth generation. 5G is the fifth, And every generation of connectivity that we've had has increased the capacity for us to do more, to transfer more data, and it's just been more powerful for us to be able to enable more tools. In the agriculture sector, 5G will enable autonomous vehicles on farms. It would also allow us to support our crops at the plant level. So we won't be dealing with a whole field with 5G. We will be dealing with each individual plant and be able to provide care accordingly. There are also multifunction robots that 5G will enable. And there are some of these tools that are already in place today. And I really wish I figured out how to get a video of this, but there's a company called Carbon Robotics that has robots that shoot lasers. Let's say they use lasers to destroy 100,000 weeds an hour, covering 50 to 20 acres a day without disturbing the soil or plants, and it operates 24/7 autonomously. I highly recommend to YouTube Carbon Robotics. It's just very fulfilling to watch this laser just zap a bunch of weeds. You don't see the laser itself, but you definitely see the result, and it's very fun. Highly recommend that you do that afterwards. When it comes to technology enabled by connectivity, farmers do need access to digital infrastructure, and this digital infrastructure can help lead the way to help reducing more emissions or on top of what farmers are already doing today. So this graph here highlights the emissions in Canada. Canada has made some pretty significant commitments on the international stage, as have many governments. Canada is committed to net zero emissions by 2050 and reducing emissions by up to 45% by 2030. Now the issue, as you can see from the graph, is that currently Canada has only reduced 9% of our emissions. So we're nowhere close to the numbers that we've committed to achieving. When it comes to the agriculture sector specifically, the agriculture sector is responsible for about 10% of Canada's greenhouse gas emissions. You will all know that farmers are under a microscope right now when it comes to emissions by government, by your buyers, but also by consumers. The good news, though, is that farmers are taking actions. They are taking actions to further reduce their emissions. A lot of those actions have to do with different tools like precision agriculture. According to StatsCan, in 2020, half of all farmers reported leveraging at least one form of technology on their farm. 32% have used soil sampling, and 27% are using auto steer. Now, some of these technologies will be enabled by connectivity, others will not. Those who have been innovating in the ag tech space do recognize that connectivity does tend to be an issue in rural communities, and so they've created tools that can be used offline. However, the information and data that gets collected from these tools does need to be in a Wi-Fi enabled area at some point so that data can be uploaded. Now, I don't know about you guys, but anytime there is an extra step involved with something, I don't want to do it. So in order for data to flow more seamlessly throughout the agriculture sector, we need to have farms that are connected so data can flow more seamlessly, and it can take one more thing off of the list of farmers' list. Now, there are many benefits to digitizing and adopting technologies, particularly on the sustainability front. There was a report that came out last year from Farpoint Research that suggested 2% of all emissions in Canada could be reduced through the use of ag technologies. And when it comes to leveraging digital technologies across the board, across all sectors, about 20% of emissions could be reduced. When it comes to the agriculture sector specifically, I did give a shout out to precision ag technologies in the last slide there. But when it comes to crop sectors, precision ag has been a very handy tool. Just some examples. Soil moisture sensors and precision irrigation systems can reduce water demand for irrigation by 40% without hampering operations. And precision irrigation systems also reduce the amount of fossil fuels required to get the same results. Here in Ontario, the four R's were applied in corn production, and their results were they increased their yields by nearly 20% while reducing their greenhouse gas emissions by 75%. And that was, again, through the 4Rs and through the use of precision ag. I saw some ranchers yesterday. I can't see them in the crowd right now because you're not wearing your hats, but you're probably here. There we go, I see the hat, thank you very much. When it comes to livestock management, precision feeding systems have supported in targeting feed more precisely, reducing waste and emissions. I'm sure a few of you have seen the bins and feedlots where they accurately weigh the amount of feed that's needed. Again, it helps to reduce waste, helps to reduce emissions, and feedlots have also been using anaerobic digesters to reduce emissions on the farm, then also create an energy source on the other end. Part of Telus Agriculture, we have a company called Telus Feedlot, and they've been providing data and insights to feedlot operators who are able to leverage that information to access the emissions quantification protocol in Alberta. So not only are they reducing their emissions, but they're also supporting their financial year ends by leveraging this data. There's a farmer on the CFA board, I think it's Lynn Jacobson. I should have asked Catherine this yesterday, but I'm pretty sure it's Lynn Jacobson who says this. He says that a farmer can't be green if they're in the red. And he's right. You know, there need to be economic benefits to adopting ag technologies in addition to sustainability, and there are. 5G, the last bullet point there highlights that 5G ag technologies can add an estimated $2.7 billion to $3.5 billion to Canada's GDP by 2030. When it comes to the individual farm level, precision agriculture technologies can help increase AEM and the canola growers did a study, and they suggested that precision ag can help increase productivity by 4%. All while reducing the inputs that are used. There's not a single farmer in this country who wants to use more inputs than are actually required, and technology can help them with that. So if there is a sustainability benefit to adopting technology, but there's also an economic benefit to adopting technologies, why hasn't everybody already done this? Like, why haven't we seen mass adoption of technology across the board? I think it's because digital policies aren't meeting the demands and the needs of the agriculture and agri-food sector today. So to support environment, climate, and economic outcomes in the agriculture sector, we must enable an ecosystem of digital policies to support sustainability and emissions reductions. I've listed five different policy ideas here that can be considered digital policies that can also support climate outcomes when it comes to the agriculture sector, but also here in Canada. The first one is access to connectivity. Second is supporting the adoption of technology through subsidies. Third, we've got digital upskilling for the agriculture sector. The fourth one is a little vague here, but we'll get into more description of what it actually means shortly. It's to define, track, and leveraging ag tech adoption. And finally, the national strategy of ag tech adoption, and that's to remove hurdles that currently exist. So I'll be spending the majority of my time talking about connectivity. This is the one where most questions tend to pop up, so I'll try to be very thorough in what I mean by digital policy for connectivity. Again, as I mentioned off the top, 40% of rural households do not have access to high-speed internet connectivity. There was somebody who was chatting with me the other day who said that they can see a tower from their farm, but they don't have good connectivity. And one of the reasons for that is likely something called spectrum. Now, I'm about to get very technical in what I'm about to describe. My apologies in advance. But spectrum are radio waves that are all around us. These radio waves help to transmit information. So from your AM/FM radio to your Wi-Fi router to your smartphone, all of these devices rely on different spectrum bands, and they relay and receive information. Spectrum is a public resource, and because it's a public resource, it is regulated by the federal government. And telecom companies need spectrum to be able to provide connectivity to their customers. We get spectrum from the federal government through a series of auctions that take place, In these auctions, everybody makes a pitch for how they will leverage spectrum licenses, and then the government decides who will get spectrum licenses and for which regions. These licenses are typically valid for about 20 years, and they are based to cover a certain amount of geography. So now that you've got this background, if you can see a tower from your farm, but you're not getting decent connectivity, there is a good chance that that tower does not cover the spectrum in your area, and you might just be right outside of the border of it. So that tower isn't going to serve you as well as a new tower or a different tower might. Spectrum policy has not been built for rural Canada, and this is an issue that needs to be solved. One of our recommendations to solving this and to make spectrum work for rural Canadians is to maximize the deployment of spectrum. If government got spectrum out into the hands of telcos faster, we can get service out to customers faster. And not only do we need to be maximizing deployment faster, but we also need to set some standards in terms of strong deployment conditions. These licenses can be valid for up to 20 years. A telco can choose to do nothing with that spectrum for up to 20 years if they choose to. So these licenses should also have a time limit on when that spectrum should be used so that telcos deliver connectivity to the consumer faster. The second issue is cost. It does cost a lot of money to set up broadband infrastructure in rural communities. There's a large amount of space with less people, and so it can be very difficult to build out that business case. And this is where government subsidies for rural connectivity come into play. The Universal Broadband Fund has been extremely helpful. If I was giving this presentation to you, 4 years ago, or even 3 years ago, I probably would have been saying that 65 to 70% of rural Canadians do not have access to high-speed internet. COVID did spur a lot of action in terms of getting connectivity to rural Canadians, but this work really does need to continue. And we've been recommending creating a new rapid response broadband fund, but with a bit of a sustainability lens to it. We know that there are many different industries in rural communities that are considered high emitters. So let's try to get those communities connected faster through a new connectivity broadband fund that focuses on ag tech adoption in industries so that these industries can drive emissions reductions using technology, all enabled by connectivity. The third recommendation here has to do with telcos and telecom companies innovating in this space. Telecoms have been moving from copper to fiber. Fiber is more environmentally friendly. It takes up less physical space. It is a future-proof technology, and we can move a lot more information and a lot more data through fiber than we ever could through copper. At Telus, we've also been working with Olds College to test Wi-Fi connectors that we brought in from Australia and testing them on the Olds College Smart Farm to see if we can get dead zones in fields connected using Wi-Fi connector capacities. We've also been working with a company called TerraStar to leverage satellite to provide texting, phone, and ag IoT capabilities to areas with dead zones. We recently published a successful test recently. This is still a project that is in the works, but we need to continue innovating in this space to figure out how we can get solutions to rural Canadians that will work for them, but that will also be reliable and consistent in terms of service. The second policy recommendation were tech adoption subsidies. Investing in advanced machinery and precision equipment and data-driven technologies, it can be a financial commitment and an expensive one to take on. We do know that larger producers are able to easily take on some of these actions because they have the ability of scale. But for small and medium-sized farmers, this can be harder to do. So in order to ensure that small and medium-sized farmers don't get left behind, we've been recommending creating the incentives towards the adoption of technology that enable emissions reductions. Third, we've got digital upskilling in the sector. Ag tech is a new world for many, and we need to really start working on building an understanding and trust in data and technologies that come out. Farmers won't want to use technologies that on their farm without understanding how they will actually support them, especially if things are working right now. One thing that I forgot to add on this slide is that it's incumbent on ag tech companies to ensure that they can prove that there is a return on investment on these technologies. Again, we've been working with Olds College on testing out some of our variable rate fertilizer application tools. I can stand in front of you all day and talk about how great those are and how great of an investment it will be for you, but it's much better for that to come from somebody else, from a college, from professors who are testing it on their own farms and being able to provide the scientific backing of, well, yes, this does indeed provide you with an ROI. So ag tech has a position to play here, but we also need to continue supporting educational institutions like the University of Guelph, Olds College, Lakeland College, University of Saskatchewan, University of Alberta. There are many across the country. We are very lucky for that. But we need to continue investing in these universities and continue investing in programs that support digital upskilling of the current agricultural workforce, but also encourage people from outside of the industry to come in to help innovate. We also need to try to find people who know both the agriculture side of the business, but also the software side, so that we can have people who understand what it's actually like to be on a farm when they're inventing and creating new technologies. Fourth, we've got defining, tracking, and creating new opportunities to leverage ag tech adoption. At this point in time in Canada, we haven't really figured out how to measure sustainability in agriculture. We don't have defined baselines, and ag data doesn't have consistent definitions. The industry is currently working, actually it's industry, government, and academia have all come together to build out the National Agriculture Sustainability Index. This project is being led by David McInnes, who many of you in this room will probably know. But this is a work in progress. We're trying to set up metrics on what sustainability looks like and how to measure. But until we actually figure out how we're going to do this, we've been recommending that government leverage the adoption of digital solutions as a leading indicator, as a KPI for climate benefits. Is it perfect? No. But it is easier to reward those who are adopting early and to recognize them and to build a story around what is happening in the sector if we're counting more consistently on how often this is happening. The second recommendation here has to do with carbon markets. Eric was alluding, I don't see him right now, Eric was alluding to it earlier. There are opportunities with carbon markets. Voluntary carbon markets are already out there and they're active, but they're not regulated. And there is very limited trust on how these voluntary carbon markets work, and it can be confusing. So we recommend that the government create carbon protocols and create a regulated carbon market so that there is that trust factor and that backing in terms of how a program is going to work, what is actually required, so that there isn't this distrust that either continues or distress that gets created. To make this a real success, though, there need to be science-based standards to establish a common language and baseline measurement for measurement, for verification, and reporting. And finally, we have the National Strategy for Ag Tech Adoption. In terms of strategies for the adoption of ag technologies, the US has a strategy, the Netherlands has a strategy, Australia has a strategy on this front as well. We're recommending that, again, government, academia, and industry come together at one table and they have a discussion on how to accelerate ag technologies in the sector. Have a very frank discussion of what are the hurdles to the adoption of technologies and how are we going to systematically overcome those hurdles so that we can see mass adoption in the country. A process like this will create a clear framework that can be leveraged across government, industry, and academia to take the clear actions that we all need to be taking to ensure that we can overcome that hump. So those are some of my recommendations on how we can leverage digital policies to support climate initiatives within the sector. I do like to jump into, what can we do from here? How can we use some of these ideas, and what can we action? In terms of for the farmers in the room, what I recommend you do is talk to your elected officials. Talk to your elected officials about, if elected officials want to see a reduction in emissions, you tell them what you need to help make that happen. Because farmers aren't about to set up their own private networks in their farms to be able to leverage technologies. That's just not going to, for the most part, that's not going to happen. So they need to hear from you on what you need to enable things like technologies to help reduce emissions. When it comes to government, as you develop sustainability policies, consider how digitization plays a factor into the recommendations, and how digitization could potentially become a hurdle that needs to be overcome, and what government can do to help farmers be a part of this digital era. Technology is only going to increase, and it's only going to improve, and it's only going to get stronger, and we cannot leave our rural communities behind by leaving them with outdated infrastructure. And for any of the other telecoms or ag tech companies in the room, I'm pretty sure I'm the only person from a telco in the room, so I might just be talking to myself, but I'm fairly confident there are other ag tech companies here. We need to continue innovating. We need to continue innovating for rural connectivity solutions in rural communities, like leveraging satellite to provide phone, texting, and IoT services. But we also need to ensure that we're creating technologies that actually work and benefit farmers on the farm, to ensure that they are getting value out of it economically, but also in other ways, including for sustainability. So thank you all very much for your time. I'm really hoping that I kept within my time limits here, and happy to open the floor to any questions that anybody might have. All right, so there are many. All right, so we'll start right off the top then. So would it be fair to say the telcos want the government to subsidize infrastructure because it's not profitable to build in farming communities? Well, it is a tool that is a part of the solution, right? At the end of the day, telcos are running a business, and we do need to create a business case for wherever we decide to invest in. And this is where government subsidies do come into play. Again, the UBF has been, the Universal Broadband Fund, sorry, I tend to talk in acronyms sometimes, has been a very helpful tool in helping to increase connectivity in rural communities, and this is a partnership that I suspect will continue for some time to come. Is spectrum like real estate? I mean, yes and no. That's a good question. So what happens with spectrum is that there are licenses that we purchase from the government to connect communities in certain areas for wherever that spectrum is for. Telcos can choose to sell their spectrum license to another telecom company. And typically when that sale happens, the telco that is selling their license will sell it for much higher than what they purchased it for from the federal government. I do think that's wrong, mostly because if anybody is going to sell spectrum for a higher profit, it should be the government, because that money then goes back into the public purse instead of into another corporation. So I hope whoever asked that question, I hope I answered your question. But yes, so telecom companies can sell their licenses to another telecom. Typically, it will go for a higher price, but I do think it's better if the government just resold that spectrum, so that if anybody is going to make money off of it, it's government, because then it at least goes back to the taxpayer. How much spectrum is available for auction? I don't know, but I can tell you that there is currently an auction taking place right now for what's called 3800 spectrum. 3800 spectrum is what will be leveraged for 5G connectivity. The auction is currently taking place, and because Telus is participating in this auction, I can't really say much more than that. But there is an auction currently taking place, and that is the auction that will deliver 5G connectivity to communities across the country. Is there spectrum that works best for rural communities? So the spectrum that is being auctioned right now, it's called 3800 spectrum. Because it's 5G connectivity, and like at this point, if any towers are going up, like, we should be focusing on the future of technology and not what we had, 5-10 years ago. So 3800 spectrum is going to be very important for rural communities because the higher capacity that level of spectrum is going to allow. So strategies read, Digitech seem to be limited to production. How can we bring farm business management into this space? Well, farm business management is already in the agri-tech space. So we have a tool called Farm at Hand, helps manage farm operations. We've got farmers like Bobby Joe Donovan in central Alberta, I think from Mossley, Alberta, who leverages that tool, and it allows her to keep track of all the various different bits of information that she needs, to apply for crop insurance, like weather patterns, when she's seeded. There are also digital technologies that support banking and financing in the agriculture sector. So the agri-tech space, I'm mostly focused on precision agriculture, just to lay out the sustainability piece because it's such a big issue in the sector right now. But there are digital tools that exist for farm management as well. How do we navigate the tension between producers, telecoms like Telus, and government on who owns farm data? So the owner of farm data is the producer. Full stop. They own the data. And the contracts will say as much as well. So if you're ever dealing with an ag tech company, do ask that question, do have those discussions before you sign any contracts, because at the end of the day, the producer is the person who should be owning that, who should be owning the data that gets collected. Can you tell us more about the farm safety device? Is it available now? At what cost? So I don't actually know the cost of the tool itself. Sorry, I'm on the public policy team, so I just talk about ideas all day. But the tool is called the Connected Worker Program. It is available today. So if you Googled it, you would find it, or if you went on Telus's website, Telus Agriculture's website, you'll find it there. Carbon robotics sounds fun. Any other fun technologies to YouTube? Oh, yeah. So I was watching Carbon Robotics yesterday and just kicking myself for not having the video available for everybody to watch today. You know what? I'm blanking on the fun ones to watch. I would recommend that you start with Carbon Robotics. I mean, there are amazing technologies out there that are doing amazing things. Even just watching autonomous tractors go through a field, this is not something that we would have guessed we would have had 10 years ago, but we do today. The power of 5G is going to allow more of these sort of technologies, stronger drones to start assessing agriculture. YouTube will have just a whole slew of them, and recommend just YouTube or Google cool ag technologies, and I'm sure a whole slew of them will come right at you. All right. Well, thank you all very much for your time. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn if you have any other questions. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks so much, Sangeeta. That was definitely some rapid fire questions, and I think you handled them very, very well, which is no surprise. Yeah, really, really interesting stuff, and nice to know that there's digital technologies available, not just for production, but for business as well. I think maybe that seeds some ideas for next year's conference, most definitely.